Welcome to a new episode of Drops of Science, the multilingual podcast that brings you the latest updates and discoveries in natural sciences. We start today's episode by talking about decisions. In nature, these are often tied to resources and to how much risk to take to obtain them. The decisions to be made can be very diverse. A classic example is foraging, where resources are unpredictable in both quantity and quality and are associated with different predation risks. There are several hypotheses about risk propensity. Among them, the idea that it may vary with age, with younger individuals being more risk-prone than older ones. A team of researchers from Germany set out to test risk-taking by age in 88 Barbary macaques, Macaca sylvanus, living in Rocamadour, France. To do this, they conducted a behavioral experiment presenting pairs of stimuli that varied in potential risks and gains. Specifically, they used peanuts, high quality, and popcorn, low quality, combined with a rubber snake, high risk, and a cube with a snakeskin pattern, low risk. The animals were tested over 2 consecutive years, before the first meal and with the subject isolated from conspecifics, to reduce satiety and competition. First, there was a familiarization phase with the food stimulus, after which the risk was introduced. The following year, the animals were assigned the inverted combination. For example, if a subject was assigned snake and popcorn, the following year the same individual would be assigned cube and peanuts. The scientists found that, regardless of age, the monkeys were more likely to take the peanut than the popcorn, and less likely to take the reward when it was paired with the snake than with the cube. Thus, no age effect was found in choice related to risk. However, the researchers examined the data further by considering the latency to retrieve the reward, that is, how long it takes to decide, observing that the animals were much more cautious in front of the snake than the cube. Moreover, older individuals were faster than younger ones to retrieve the popcorn, even when paired with the snake, running counter the hypothesis that risk-taking declines with age. In contrast, with the peanut, age did not change the intake times. This result may be linked to the experience of older animals, and therefore to a subjective attribution of resource value. That means that a combination of risk aversion, experience, and the greater value placed on a food resource in old age might best explain the observed pattern. However, as often happens, further studies are needed to go deeper into the issue. We're going to continue talking about animals, but let's move to the sea, where once common in the coastal waters of the Mediterranean, the Black Sea, and the northeastern Atlantic, the angel shark, Squatina squatina, has disappeared from 90% of its historical range over the 20th century and is now listed as critically endangered on the IUCN Red List. Its decline is mainly due to human activities, coastal fishing, habitat destruction, and targeted capture for meat and leather. Their slow life cycle, with few juveniles, long pregnancies, and late sexual maturity, makes recovery particularly difficult. Today, small populations survive only in a few refuges, where bottom trawling is restricted, notably the Canary Islands, where it has been banned since 1986, and Corsica, where industrial fishing pressure is lower. Yet, because these populations are isolated, studying them is challenging. For this reason, researchers from the University of Montpellier, in collaboration with local authorities and fishermen, investigated the Corsican population using conservation genomics. Between 2020 and 2022, 150 tissue samples were collected along Corsica's eastern coast, between Bastia and Solenzara, from accidentally caught sharks. Fin fragments were analyzed to extract and sequence DNA, aiming to understand the genetic structure of the population and estimate its effective size, meaning how many individuals actually contribute to reproduction. Results show that the Corsican population is genetically connected along the coast, but displays low genetic diversity and an effective population size of about 290 individuals, indicating high vulnerability. About 42% of the sharks had a close relative within the sample, and the pregnant female to 3 half-sibling sharks, suggesting multiple paternity, a behavior never before recorded in this species. Although the presence of pregnant females and newborns confirms that Corsican population is still reproductively active, the number of breeding individuals remains below the minimum safety threshold to prevent inbreeding and loss of genetic variability. Corsica therefore represents a precious refuge for the angel shark, and protecting it means keeping hope alive for a species on the brink of extinction. While still focusing on predators, we're moving from the large ones, like the angel shark mentioned earlier, to the smaller ones. There are in fact significant differences between these two groups. The former has a high absolute energy demand, but a relatively low mass-specific metabolism, that is, the amount of energy consumed per kilogram of body mass. This means that large predators have greater energy reserves and can survive longer without food, while small predators, with their faster metabolisms, must feed almost constantly. To do so, they hunt many small but energy-rich prey, minimizing the risk of failure. This pattern also applies to bats, or so scientists thought. There are exceptions, such as Trachops cirrhosus, whose hunting strategies researchers set out to uncover. They captured adult bats and, on Earth individuals, attached tiny data loggers between their shoulders. These miniature devices recorded ultrasonic sounds and 3D movements, including echolocation calls, the sound of wind during flight, chewing noises, and acceleration changes revealing flight landing or prey capture. By combining sound and motion data, researchers estimated the energy gained during a night hunting, inferring prey mass from chewing time. Results showed that Trachops cirrhosus spends little time flying, instead catching prey on the ground or in vegetation. Acoustic analysis revealed a passive hunting strategy. The bats minimize echolocation use and eavesdrop on the sounds made by potential prey, such as frog mating calls. Chewing times varied widely, and in 5% of cases exceeded 28 minutes, suggesting some individuals consume prey weighing up to 30 grams, nearly their own body weight. The hunting specialization of Trachops cirrhosus is tightly linked to the high abundance of large prey in pristine tropical habitats. Passive listening and perch hunting allow these bats to conserve energy while targeting big energy-rich prey, effectively placing them on par with much larger carnivores capable of taking prey their own size. We now move to plants to discuss photosynthesis, a process that depends primarily on sunlight and allows both terrestrial and aquatic plants, such as algae, to produce energy. This production can sometimes be excessive, which can pose a real danger to the plants themselves. Too much light leads to an excess of energy that can damage cells. So, how do photosynthetic organisms protect themselves? A team of researchers from Italy and Japan attempted to answer this question by studying the marine algae Codium fragile. Codium fragile lives in coastal and intertidal waters, where light is filtered by the water and becomes richer in blue-green wavelengths. Its photosynthetic antenna complex is adapted to this light and is also wider, meaning it can capture more photons. The issue is that a wider antenna can slow down the transfer of absorbed energy, increasing the likelihood that chlorophyll enters a particular excited state, the triplet, which can react with oxygen and produce toxic molecules. To understand how the algae avoid damage while still collecting light efficiently, the researchers isolated their antenna complex and examined their behavior using electron paramagnetic resonance spectroscopy, a technique that allows the detection of triplet states and reveals whether chlorophyll remains trapped in this harmful state. The results show that excess energy does not stay on chlorophyll but is quickly transferred to another pigment, a carotenoid. This process is called triplet-triplet energy transfer. The carotenoid also enters a triplet state, but unlike chlorophyll, it does not produce harmful reactive molecules. Specifically, the carotenoid involved is siphonein, which is not found in land plants but is typical of siphonous algae. Its electronic structure allows for stronger interaction with nearby chlorophylls, making energy transfer faster and more effective. This explains why Codium fragile can have a wider antenna without suffering damage, despite lacking other photoprotection systems found in many plants. Siphonane allows these algae to capture more light while taking fewer risks, a fine-tuned adaptation to their unique habitat. From the ocean light, we now move toward the darkness, but not the natural darkness of the great depths. Instead, we are talking about a recently recognized threat, sudden episodes of drastic reduction in the underwater light that can last for days or even months. These events are known as marine dark waves and are characterized by the strong reduction in the amount of light reaching the seabed. As a result, they pose a serious risk to algae, seagrasses, and all organisms that depend on photosynthesis. Until recently, however, there was no standardized way to describe and compare such events. To fill this gap, an international group of researchers proposed a new analytical framework, starting with a formal definition. A marine dark wave occurs when the amount of light reaching the seabed drops well below the normal values for a specific location, season, and depth, and remains low for several consecutive days. This approach is essential because what constitutes extreme darkness in shallow tropical waters is not comparable to conditions in deeper waters or at higher latitudes, and vice versa. To apply this definition, the researchers analyzed long-term time series of underwater light collected by seabed sensors in California and New Zealand, alongside satellite data capable of estimating seabed light availability across large coastal areas. Each day was compared with historical values from the same period of the year, allowing truly anomalous events to be distinguished from normal seasonal variability. Light availability was also considered as a total daily energy. The results show that, depending on the criteria used, marine dark waves may appear rare or relatively frequent. However, the most intense events consistently emerge regardless of the thresholds applied. The study also distinguishes between short events lasting only a few days and longer events persisting for weeks, which can result in light losses approaching 100% relative to normal conditions during the most critical periods. Short events are more numerous and often intense, but transient, whereas longer events represent a prolonged form of stress capable of reducing photosynthesis, slowing growth, and altering benthic communities. A 2-day blackout may be tolerable, but weeks of reduced light can compromise the survival of entire ecosystems. Not all marine dark waves affect the entire water column in the same way. Some involve both surface and deeper layers, while others remain confined to upper waters. The causes of marine dark waves can be both natural and human-driven, and understanding them in greater detail is essential. Knowing when, where, and why the sea suddenly darkens can help predict biological responses and protect coastal environments that are increasingly under pressure. This concludes today's episode of Drops of Science. Thanks for staying with us. See you soon, and good science!